Hey, hello there. Uh, oh, looks like we are online. So anyway, um, oh well, I just saw that on the stream. Okay, so we are online. This is a stream about tarot. Anyways, yummy. Yo man, yo man. All right. Anyways, man up there. All right, so we got some tarot cards here, and did a tarot reading about a week ago, and as I am occasionally wont to do, I don't really study it at the time, but I do study it over the period of several days. Um, for me, tarot and I Ching were far more profound when I first started to study them. And this is frustrating. I mean, it's like everything else. You have this like beginner's mind, and it's really profound how much how how a new experience can open up your mind. But then once that experience kind of like becomes repetitive, it's no longer as profound. So it's important to be able to return to that state of mind. And if you don't think about returning to that state of mind, um, and try to focus on what it was like, or if you don't like focus on remembering what that state of mind was like in the beginning, so that later on you can return to it, then it becomes harder and harder for you to do so. And so it's not just beginner's mind that's valuable, but it's also that intent to make it easier to return to later. And these things are like a lotus, right? Or like a spiral. So you are in the middle, and then your future states are spiraling outwards, but you're always looking back at the other states. So you have to be able to look at your previous mind states and analyze them for what they are, and they should kind of be parameters in how you think about yourself. And if you do that, it facilitates metacognition. I didn't really intend to talk about that though. So I might start a new series on. I like read speed, by the way. These speed of sound mixes are always pretty good. Yeah, just a little side note. She is kind of anti-Trump, but I don't really give a shit about politics. I like it when other people have different politics. Um, that to me is something that other viewpoints should only grow. And it shouldn't really discredit someone's art. Anyways, moving on. Oh, God damn it. Oh, there we go. Rota Fortunae. This is the Wheel of Fortune. And, like, fortune is not completely synonymous with, can anything ever be completely synonymous? Isn't it always quasi-synonymous? And not pseudo-synonymous? So, a little too much linguistics there, but anyways, the Latin idea of fortune is not exactly identical with luck, per se. It's more about what luck brings, and it's like a cross between luck and fate. Let me actually make this a little bit larger, or better yet, even though programmers like to make jokes about about blogging with Markdown and Emacs, it is very useful. So watch this. Oh, and I also have some comments on YouTube not providing a category for spirituality. That is very frustrating. In fact, yeah, I'll get to that in a second. I was trying to base 64 decode WebM. WebM is a video streaming format, but that didn't work, obviously. Alright, so Markdown. Volume Markdown. Let's do a little preview. Markdown preview. Markdown! There we go, look at this. Look at that. Isn't that convenient? Now, if I was a writer, I would definitely be blogging with Markdown, or I would be writing with Markdown. And the reason is, here's the reason why. Let me just show you this real quick. Watch this. See what we got? See what we got? Okay, that's not as impressive there, but watch this. I've got another readme for another stream scheduled right after this one. See, I've got all my headers right there? And then I can explore them one at a time. And then I can expand them one at a time. Like that. So, like, if you actually use the features of Emacs and Markdown mode, or org mode is actually probably better, then it's definitely, like, one of the best ways to be a writer of, and, like, organize your thoughts. So I might not use it for the second or third draft or the final draft, and I don't know, the best way to write something is to write it the first time, or the second time, write it for the first time again. So, anyways, that's that. So, this is a episode here. I'm going to try to do this kind of faster. I don't know how long I've been streaming. Well, who knows? Average watch time, 12 seconds. Great success. Okay, anyway, I'm kind of pissed off about this. About this. Screw you, YouTube. Film and animation, autos and peoples, music, pets and animals, sports, travel and events, gaming, people and blogs, comedy, entertainment. What is the difference, by the way? News and politics, how-to and style, education, science and technology, nonprofits and activism. I mean, it's like you're already censoring, like, spirituality and religion. And we're not even, like, a communist nation yet. But anyway. I digress. Okay. But, you know, it's probably China. You're probably a front for China. Am I right? China. See the linguistics of the name China? Oh, from Portuguese. Obviously pronounced China. My Portuguese is, it's like not even rusty. It's not really clear where that came from. But, other people say it's Sino. Sino. China. Other people say it's from the Qing dynasty, which is, like, from the, first, true empire of China. So the Zhou dynasty collapsed, and then there was like a period of time afterwards where there were mainly three empires, and I don't know if that's like actually the Warring States period, but and then eventually, like, the Zhou dynasty got smaller, their territory got smaller and smaller and smaller, and they were more like a Washington, D.C., sort of, that was kind of like delegating responsibility for different geographic areas to other empires. They still maintained power, but then eventually they were overthrown. And then the first nation to really unify all of China, I think including North and South China, was the Qing dynasty. So some people say that the Qing dynasty is where the name China comes from. I don't know. But anyway, like, it really makes me uncomfortable that there's no category for spirituality and religion. That's bizarre. Anyway, so, like, if you're into tarot, I would strongly recommend checking out Benabella Lynn's book. Holistic Tarot. It's about 800 pages long, but it's a great reference book. It's an integrative approach to tarot. Wow. How does Amazon... I changed my Google language again to Italian from Spanish. And apparently Amazon knows about this. I guess because I accessed the page from... That's kind of annoying. I like to use different languages. I'll get into that in the next stream, but which is on censorship. So anyway, last week I did a past, present, and future reading, and I got the One of Wands, followed by the Hermit, upside down. Followed by the Five of Cups, right side up. So let me find the one of Wands here. Which is a card that represents new fire, or new power, or new social influence, new energy. Where the hell is it? Dude, what the hell? If it's not in this deck, I'm going to be pissed. Because according to statistical mechanics, that would mean my readings are invalid. Or at least not according to the conventions. Come on. That's what this whole stream is about. Oh, here it is. Eine Stava. I need a new scene here. Solo un secondo. We need a webcam. Abracadabra. Alright, yeah. My webcam is like 1080p, but I've cut off like 25% of the top, bottom, left, and right, so that so my computer has to do a little bit less work while allowing the operations, the computational operations that OBS does to be as efficient as possible without the need for linear encoding. So in other words, there's no stretching or skewing. Now there is, of course, but whoa, that does not look very good. Anyway, so I'm going to get the words on here. Yeah. Yeah, anyway. Il beton. Uno bastos. Is that right? Uno basto. A wand. Uno dei bastoni. I don't know. Der Stab. Der Staben. So the reading was, again, the reading yesterday, and this is kind of reversed, so it's really confusing for me. Okay, my reading last week was One of Wands for past, the 9 of the major arcana for the present, representing the Hermit, and the 5 of Cups. Oh boy. Ooh. Anyways. The 5 of Cups, representing like, I mean, it's hard to define any card in any minor arcana in any suit without referring to the other cards. So you see here there is a reference to, and I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this, but there is a reference to the 3 of Cups and the 2 of Cups. So the Two of Cups represents like, hey, this is a new relationship. The Three of Cups represents temperance. The Four of Cups, well, it represents like a lack of temperance or a partying or kind of like celebration or good times with friends, shots, 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 you know. And then the Four of Cups represents the kind of like sense of regret that comes with having used used the time. It's like the same kind of sense of regret that comes after a night of drinking or whatever. So, but if you'll notice, the Three of Cups has a reference, or the Four of Cups has a visual reference to the Three of Cups and the One of Cups. So there's always still something else out there that you haven't found yet after you spent that night partying or whatever. But the Five of Cups has that encoded into it sort of as well, and the man doesn't know what he still has, that he's not really capitalizing on. So anyway, the reading seemed to mean like you're gonna have a new influence, or there's gonna be some kind of new influence, some kind of new fire in your life, but you're still kind of alienated, sort of, or isolated in a bad way. It's not like a journey of solitude, like a spirit quest, or like a man going to the mountain, like in Nietzsche's Zarathustra, to isolate in solitude, who becomes wise after looking down at the people from the mountain. And then Five of Cups. I was shaving the mirror, so I should be able to do this. Anyway, the Five of Cups is about thinking that you've lost. It's like about looking back on what happened during the Three of Cups with the sense of regret that is in the Four of Cups, but then not realizing that you could have other options here. That's what the Two of Cups behind the man kind of represents. So, so that reading sort of was like, you've got something new, you don't realize it, you're still withdrawn from society, but you, I need to be on the lookout for something new that I'm not going to recognize. And so, like, one of my favorite things about watching or listening to other people do tarot readings is that, or more advanced people doing tarot readings. Okay, here we go. Up. I'm bad at this. One of my favorite things about watching more experienced people do readings is that they don't so there's the literal interpretation, which I just gave, and then there's like the response to the literal interpretation, which is probably what you should tell somebody. And so it's sort of like in psychology where you think about the solution, or you think about the problem, and if you focus on the problems, then that might not, if somebody needs help, that might not be what they need to hear. They need to hear the solutions or the response to the problems that will actually allow them to have progress. And so now this reading wasn't very synchronous, or it didn't really provoke synchronicity. And then yesterday I did another reading, and I shuffle the cards very thoroughly. Now I call it the quantum shuffle because it sort of involves quantum information theory. And you might be wondering, why would it involve quantum information theory? Now, I'm not saying quantum mechanics. I'm saying quantum information theory. So I take the cards like this. I don't, a lot of people say, don't, keep your cards, tucked away and stuff. And a quick aside back to the idea of beginner's mind. When you get a fresh new set of cards, you get different readings. And a lot of people will say, well, my deck doesn't give me good readings anymore, or they're like, this deck has a particular kind of reading that comes out of it. And why is that? Well, it's because like as like the cards accumulate a little bit more like dirt and stuff, and a little bit of damage, it affects how you shuffle them. So unless you shuffle them like a deck of cards for blackjack, and shuffle them many times, you're gonna encounter some problems where some of the cards stick together, and because of that, your shuffle is not fair, or some pairs of cards or some cards will tend to form an affinity with other cards, and it'll affect the kinds of pairs of cards that show up in sequence. So to counteract that, I have this quantum information shuffle. So what you do, and it's gonna kind of hurt your cards, so you got to keep that in mind. I use it on old decks. So I take this and I spiral it around like this, and I make sure that there's about 13 rotations. And now, if you look at the cards here, they are, and I might do a special stream on just this. You can see that the cards at the front are more rotated than the cards in the back. So you have to account for that. So you're going to want to shuffle from the back like this, and you're going to want to not look at the cards and not let them fall out of your hand. And there's one element of this is visual, and it's magical. Okay, anyways, so you see, like now, the cards are far more shuffled. I'm going to shuffle them some more from the back and the front. And now watch this. Now, I'm looking at the card, but I don't normally do it this way. I normally do it this way. But anyway, so I just do this, which is a perturbation. And I get a heart. Aww. And then I take this, I take one stack and pull it like this. And Wada-ta. Okay. Pootie Tang is like, I really like that move. It's funny. So, and it's smart too. Okay, anyway, so that wasn't a fair shuffle because I still have these cards out here. So, the second reading, so you'll notice that the first reading was, whoops, the One of Wands followed by the Hermit, the One of Wands followed by the Hermit, followed by Five of Cups. The second reading, and I've never gotten a reading this profound or this unlikely, or I've never gotten two readings in a row that are this unlikely, because there's only three cards and two of them are the same. Now the two that were the same were both in reverse orientation. So setting that aside, they did not show up in the reading in the same sequence, and setting that aside, the odds of getting the next reading was 1 in 78 squared. So the second reading was, let's see here, second reading was the Hermit, right side up, Five of Cups, inverted, and, oh wait, shit. And see, technically, the card that I'm showing first actually is drawn second. So the card that represents the past is drawn second. Yeah, anyway. Death was drawn upside down. Now, whoa. Now, it might not seem like it, but, well, I'll get to that part later. Because I had one interpretation, and then I acquired some new information, so now I have a different interpretation. And of course, like, tarot is like a mirror, so, like, especially if you're doing your own readings, you're only really going to see, God damn it, you're only going to see what is in your own head. Oh, and another aside about the beginner's mind is that, like, in order to maintain that, you need to kind of be self-aware and you need to clear your mind, but you also should kind of ritualize your readings. So you want to do it in a special space. You want to have like maybe one of those like tapestry things or like a nice cloth that has an image on it, and you want to like clear your mind, maybe light some candles, light some sage, blow the sage around, kind of have a process, because you want to approach it's I don't believe in the bullshit. And now that might offend some people, but I don't really care. So I would say that you know I would say that tarot is bullshit, but it's only bullshit if you don't take it too serious, or it's only not bullshit if you don't take it too seriously. So I don't really believe that there's anything mystical happening here, and I don't actually know that there's not. That's also important. But I don't really want to believe there is if there isn't. So I say that in jest, and to believe what you want, but don't allow yourself to be led astray. So there is potential for people to kind of manipulate you with tarot or tarot readings. So like another reason that you want to keep your cards away from other people is that like tarot is a pattern language, and it's a set of ideas, and if people know that you know tarot, then they may be able to subtly influence you by provoking synchronicity. So if you show your cards to everybody and yada yada yada, then you might be finding synchronicity in places where people sort of intended to provoke you to have certain thoughts about images and symbols. And there's other things I'm sure I don't know about yet. So, and also keep in mind again that tarot is like a mirror. So depending on how attached you are from the query or the seeker, and that is about 10 times as true when you're doing readings for yourself. So by tarot being like a mirror, and I also think of psychedelics like a mirror in a way, like a mirror for the mind. If you look at yourself in the mirror, are you going to see anything that that is not really already part of you? And it depends on how you're approaching your own image in the mirror. But whatever you think about yourself is obviously going to come from within yourself. And there's this fantastic idea from Carl Jung's Red Book, where he had conversations with like Philocrates or something. He had like spiritual conversations where he said he was being approached by some guy with a Greek name, Philoctetes. I don't think it was Philoctetes, but anyways, the point is, that guy told him, like, thoughts are like animals that wander in and out of your mind, and you're not necessarily responsible for your own thoughts. Which, that is, like, very relieving, because, if you were to have negative thoughts, you might be horrified at yourself for allowing such things to come into your mind. But the truth is, like, you're reflecting on the experience that you have in society. So, and I'll get back to the other reading in a second. But you can obviously see that Tarot wanted, there was a big exclamation mark, like, this reading is important, or maybe this reading is important because it's highly unlikely, even though according to my shuffle, it's just as random as any other shuffle. Back to Carl Jung in the Red Book. Thoughts, you don't necessarily control your own thoughts. You might think that your mind is your mind and that nothing else can affect it, but that can't be any further from the truth. And so you can't necessarily hold yourself responsible for negative thoughts, or you can, but only to some degree. And so if you do have, like, negative thoughts, or thoughts that shock you, you shouldn't be horrified at them, but you should step back from yourself. Again, this is like the lotus, or the spiral. You're stepping back from yourself, and looking at yourself, looking at your thoughts, and looking at yourself, looking at yourself, looking at your thoughts, and looking at yourself, looking at yourself, looking at yourself, looking at your thoughts. And you try to engage in metacognition and ask yourself, why are these thoughts coming here? What is in my control? What is not in my control? what is the significance here? Am I in a negative environment? Is anyone trying to influence my thoughts? Am I trying to influence my thoughts? Am I not trying to influence my thoughts? What is going on there? And yeah, as many problems as I do have kind of a lot of really good spiritual understanding, I think. Although I am who I am. I have the faults that I have or whatever, but I used to be stuck in this kind of problem. Like, oh my God, I'm so horrified. How did I have that thought or whatever? And a lot of it had to do with I guess around 2008 or whatever. I had only had one girlfriend for like 3 years, and so I was always wondering what was wrong with me. Did I turn someone off, or because I couldn't find another relationship, and it just kept going on for years and years and years and years. And so I developed a lot of anxiety about being unable to control social interactions with women or men, really. I mean, it was just really the reason I wasn't successful with women was because I wasn't actually really successful with men either. I wasn't successful with anyone. I'm not gay or bisexual or anything. It's just I wasn't successful with anyone. But my social interactions with women were always I was always unintentionally provoking thoughts that caused or thoughts or reactions that caused the framing the interactions based on what people knew about me or what people thought they knew about me and other things to become centered around sex or sexual pursuit or possibility of relationship or whatever. But because of the high degree of stress that I was placing on myself in those such situations, and as a result of lack of any success whatsoever in that regard, it was causing a lot of anxiety. And then that anxiety, so when you're interacting with a girl, it's almost like you're hunting a deer. And now that's not really the greatest expression, but almost if you don't, well, it's like trying to approach a deer or whatever, and anything that you do can scare them off and they're going to run away. And now you may see that happen and then be like, oh god damn it, yeah, and engage in self-loathing or whatever because you couldn't get anything to happen. You may not have really been thinking what they thought you were thinking, and that's countertransference. So I am transferring onto them something related to an unconscious archetype in myself, and then reacting to those thoughts, and then seeing them reacting to me, reacting to my own thoughts, and it causes this effect, which is a lot like the kind of amplification that occurs when you put a microphone up to a speaker and you get that feedback loop. So countertransference, it's an idea that's usually talked about or discussed by psychological professionals or therapists, because a therapist can use it in a therapy session and get very positive results, because they can cause you to be presented with your own they can basically present you with a mirror that allows you to see yourself in a certain way and then see something new in yourself that you alone would not have been able to ordinarily see. So that's a beneficial use of countertransference, and even though it is overwhelmingly thought about in those terms, or in that context of analytic psychology or psychoanalysis, it's something that occurs every day. I can make the argument that it is impossible to have a thought whatsoever without engaging in projection or transference, and that the only pure thoughts without projection are the thoughts in which projection occurs or transference occurs, where the projection is asymptotically in line with reality. So it is I would believe that it is impossible to have any thoughts whatsoever without some kind of projection or transference. They're two different ideas, but they are intrinsically related. Another thing that has the same kind of paradoxical relationship to how thoughts are structured in the mind and not necessarily the brain, is displacement. So, but I don't really know as much about displacement technically. Anyways, so these thoughts kind of wander in your head, and you are not necessarily so responsible for them. You're responsible for what you do with them. And there's that quote from Buddha or whatever, or maybe it's a misattributed quote, and does anyone know? I don't really know, but it's that you are a product of all that you have thought. And again, it's the idea of that lotus, or that spiral into infinity. You are looking at yourself, 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 looking at yourself. And your mind is accumulating all these structures from the past. And if you realize this, then you can gain a lot of clarity. Anyway, so this reading I didn't really agree with, or whatever, because again, it's the hermit right side up instead of inverted. Five of Cups inverted instead of right side up. And then death upside down. And this this represents new beginnings normally. So it can be a very positive thing if it's right side up. But if it's upside down, it represents like an approaching transition that may not be so beneficial. So like everybody dies and it's dead. Or, maybe not so catastrophic, but it represents new beginnings. But those new beginnings are not really so much in your favor if it's upside down. And so I'm like, okay, what the hell? And I don't really take this stuff too seriously, but it is like, this is, Tarot and I Ching have given me the ability to think about myself, because I did not have patterns for understanding, and certainly did not have named patterns for understanding the kind of phenomena that one encounters in their life whatsoever. And that was actually what was so difficult for me to get over. So all those problems that I had for about 10 years, with girls or whatever, was like a product of being unable to socialize, but it was really like I was unable to integrate my experiences around me, and then I was unable to really respond or change from my own experiences because I didn't have an internal language with which I could use to transform myself. I didn't know about the kind of things that happen in the human condition. Now, this is, spirituality, or maybe it's just charlatanism, or maybe it's, devil worship, or, maybe it's whatever, but I didn't have that. And you can get the same thing from religion, but I don't really agree in religion, or agree with religion, and I don't know, I do actually know what I believe, and there's a book from Alfred Whitehead somewhere around here, and so I'm basically, I believe in process theology, which is that and I believe in Platonic metaphysics, which means that God is this transcendent metaphysical entity, sort of, but doesn't really have agency. And it means that God is not omnipotent and not omniscient, because of things that you have to extrapolate from complexity theory. So God can't know everything, and God can't interact in the world at all, but we can come to know God, and then people collectively, as part of a process, come to be defined by things that exist within God. Even though you might be able to argue that there is no God. And I would argue that there's no way that we can completely ever come to know whatever that God is. And I think God is not really a great word for that, because it implies agency, or it implies an actual entity that might have an appearance, or might have some kind of metaphysical appearance, or might be completely defined in a book. And that's, to me, just not even possible. I don't know how I just went on that tangent, but basically, it's up to us to make sure that there's justice in the world. And it's up to mankind to make sure that, the majority of us are actually in line with, God's will, or what we should do. And so it's sort of like a cross between theosophy and process theology, in that, like, all different major religious traditions have their understanding of what they believe God to be, but they have different perspectives on the same thing. But then cross with the idea that this is all part of a process, and which means that, like, God is being, like, instantiated gradually in the world and acts indirectly through collective social behavior. So when people are evil, people will be punished, sort of. But it's not like we'll be punished, it's just, like, if you understand, like, things about hamartology, which is, like, the study of sin, or the study of nature of sin, or the study of, like, the nature of different types of sin, or types of wrongdoing, then certain actions, like, whether it's greed, or whether it's lust, or anger, or whatever you consider to be wrong, like, acting on those things or doing those things that people normally believe are wrong have certain types of consequences. And they're different from each other, but they're all maybe wrong or maybe not wrong. But anyway, the point of that is to say that what we do matters. It matters a lot. There may be no God, really, but we should find out what is right and wrong, and we should have a society that enables justice, that, like, promotes justice, where there is rule of law, where there is, like, a clearly defined right and wrong, because otherwise we'll be led astray, and when we're led astray, like, we will collectively engage in things, and then we will reap what we sow. And it is not a God that is punishing us, but it is just merely the socio-informational consequences of our own actions. That is, it is how society reacts to information about its own actions. So when you engage in things like provoking wars, then people react to that. When you and Dante's Inferno is also a very interesting work, where, like, which is kind of centered around hamartology, like the 9 circles of hell. Each one has a theme, and you go from limbo, which is to not really believe in God, or possibly not believe in God. It's not that you do or don't. It may just be that you're agnostic or dispassionate. And so, like, in Italian society, that was kind of, like, considered a sin. I don't know if, obviously it was considered a sin to not believe in God per se, but it was more like you were sitting on the fence and you had not picked a side. And so you were in a circle of hell where everyone was like that, and everybody was dispassionate, and there was discord. And then the next circle of hell is lust, and then I don't remember what the next one is. But in the end, there's, like, fraud, violence, and I think treason is the last one. And if you'll notice, Lucifer is in the last circle of hell, and so is Jesus. And what was Jesus really accused of? And it was basically treason against Judaism, or blasphemy. But he never really declared himself to be God. It was other people that declared him to be, like, the Son of God. And he did kind of, like, imply that he was the Son of God towards the end, I think. But, like, that caused a lashback in the Jewish community at the time, and they killed him for that. And the Romans just sat by and didn't really, like, Pontius Pilate didn't really want to punish Jesus or not punish Jesus, but he was like, okay, whatever. And so he permitted the Jews to kill Jesus on the charge of blasphemy. But exiting the last circle of hell, after you've been tested by all the other circles of hell, is that, like, it means that, like, you've been put through these situations of limbo, lust, blah blah blah, violence, fraud, and treason, and it's the metaphor here is a baptism of fire. All society has thrown all these things at you, and you are a product of what is left, or you are what remains after having been tested by all that fire. And again, fire represents power or social influence. And so it's only the man who can withstand all of that who is capable of leaving hell. Yeah. Anyway, and it may not look like it right now, but after I drew this card, about 8 hours after, I got sick, so I might have coronavirus. Which is great. I just worked at the skating rink, which is great. Now, why am I saying this? Well, I guess because, I don't know, I have a story to tell. But why am I not saying it? Because, I don't know, like, I really could have had coronavirus. I haven't been tested. I gotta find, like, one of these free testing things. I had somebody offer to pay for, like, an immediate test, but I would rather go through the same process that everyone else went through. But I did get the death card upside down. Now, I've been taking 2 grams of vitamin C every day for about the past week anyways, as well as lots of zinc, but it's a specific form of zinc. Let me go get that real quick. And I just really got to note that I am embarrassed and furious at how America has dealt with this fucking, like, pandemic. It is unbelievable, and I think the world sees that no American has clothes. Like, we, America, are collectively the emperor without clothes. And it's because of, like, the rampant politicization of everything. Like, I mean, it should be obvious. I mean, look at us for who we are. Like, the world needs us to be leaders more than they've ever needed us to be leaders. And look at what happens. And a lot of people might hold Donald Trump for as being responsible for things, but I think that there's very little that was wrong with his response. I would give him like a 85 out of 100 in a response for coronavirus. I don't think he failed. In fact, I would tend to give him like a 93 or 95, but it's hard to tell because he didn't succeed. But he didn't fail either. Because no one would let our leader lead. That just is what it is. No one would let him lead. And look at what we did to ourselves. Did this happen really anywhere else in the world? No. But it happened in America. Because America has so many fucking so many cultural problems right now. It is unbelievable. Like what we have done to ourselves in the name of politics. And one thing that I'm most furious about is that no one has been recommending zinc and vitamin D as much as they should have. How can I get this fucking thing to zoom in on the goddamn ingredients? Anyway, so it's got, this supplement has 200 milligrams of vitamin C, 220% of the daily value. It has 130% of the daily value of vitamin D. It has calcium, it has magnesium, all of which are helpful for an immune response, but it also has 10 milligrams of OptiZinc, which is zinc L-methionine sulfate, which is an amino acid, the L enantiomer, attached to a sulfate and a zinc ion, which means that your body can fucking absorb it. Like, I found this at the grocery store, but it was kind of expensive. Now, the thing about supplements is that you cannot just go to the grocery store and pick something up off the shelf and expect it to be what it is. If you're buying, son, if you're buying Centrum, I feel sorry for you. Because you got 99 vitamins and not one is real. Or 99 minerals and not one is real. Anyway, so, and then this is vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams. You can take about up to 3 grams of vitamin C per day. And now that will cause your stomach and gut and body to be a little bit more acidic in the short term, but the antioxidant activity of vitamin C will cause your body to be less acidic in the long term. But this is a hell of a lot of vitamin C. So I've been taking about 2 grams of vitamin C for about a week. I took 4 grams within the past 24 hours. And then the other supplement that I've been taking is vitamin D, or vitamin D3. And this has 125 micrograms of vitamin D, which is 625% of the daily value. And now it is actually very important to get vitamin C from the sun, or catalyzed by sunlight, because it just works out to be better. Like, if you're doing that, you are probably also exercising. Vitamin D might be partially responsible for seasonal affective disorder, because it helps with depression. It's been helping me a lot with depression. I've been doing that for about 6 months now, and I take probably 3 of these, so about 2,000% of the daily value of vitamin D. And the thing about vitamin D is that, like vitamin A, vitamin E, and vitamin K, it is nonpolar, and it is one of the vitamins that you hear about being absorbed into fat. Other vitamins are not really so readily absorbed into fat. I mean, it depends. But vitamin B is one that's polar, and vitamin C is highly polar. So when you are sick, this is why you then drink orange juice, because like your body needs a huge dose of vitamin C. But the point about vitamin D and its nonpolarity is that you want to be putting that into your fat so that you have plenty stored up all the time. There's like, I think about 200 genes that which need vitamin D directly to be expressed. At one time, I had read that to be like 2,000. I don't know if that's 2,000 genes that are indirectly triggered by or upregulated by these utilization of vitamin D or not. But vitamin D is lipid soluble. You want it. You want a lot of it, and it makes me furious that the media in America has been arguing about hydroxychloroquine this, blah blah blah, Trump this, Trump that, blah 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 blah. Fuck you, American media. Fuck you. You probably killed like 50,000 people or 100,000 people alone by not covering specific formulations of supplements that would be unbelievably effective against coronavirus. Like, you have blood on your hands. And I'm so sick of pharmaceutical companies influencing media coverage. I am so sick of all of this. It is unbelievable. It should be considered to be embarrassing. Because and then they're like, well, we don't really know if vitamin D can really be effective against coronavirus. Like, they fucking never took an immunology class. Like, look at the genetic networks. Look at the genes that are related to each other. Look at the ones that are expressed by that are expressed or not expressed if you don't have vitamin D. Look at the ones which require vitamin D to be expressed. Look at how many of them are. There are 23,000 genes in the human body or in human cells. 200 of them, which are related to immune action, require vitamin D to be expressed. So if your vitamin D serum levels are very low and it's nonpolar, so its serum levels don't fluctuate very much unless you're taking vitamin D supplements, then those genes are not being expressed. Put 2 and 2 together and make it 4. Alright? This is unbelievably embarrassing. And the other thing is zinc. Zinc is good for your brain. If you start taking, like, this stuff gives me crazy ass dreams. And zinc is required for homeostasis of track B mechanisms, and the track B mechanisms, which are related to track A and track C. There's 3 of them: track A, track B, track C. But zinc is required for BDNF, the receptor that BDNF targets, to be reactivated. So it's required for the homeostasis of the track B receptor. And BDNF is a neurotrophic factor. That's the NF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And it is unbelievably helpful for learning. So, like, there might be, like, 100 years of psychological and neurological research that is infected with bias, that is just unbelievably wrong, because it does not control for zinc. Because this stuff makes you learn. The idea that once people get to be, and it's like neuroplasticity is just such a revolutionary idea. The idea that once people are about 25 or 35 or 50 years old, that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, that comes from all of this fatally flawed, systemically biased research in academia. And now, if you're a scientist, like, I'm sorry, I don't really respect you. If you're a doctor, I don't care. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a degree. And I know this. And I know it's true, and I don't give a shit about what you say in response, because it is true. It is true that zinc is required for neuroplasticity. It is true that you can teach an old dog new tricks. And it's true that you need zinc to teach an old dog new tricks. And if you've been studying that, it doesn't matter how many research dollars you've consumed. You will never find the answer, because there is systemic bias in your experimentation. And one last idea that is also unrelated to tarot is is the idea that oh shit. I guess it's the idea that I can't remember now. But it is going to be another fire and brimstone idea. Yeah. So we have GPT-3, right? Well, actually, I'll make this. I guess I'll probably do a live stream on this. But GPT-3 is a machine learning algorithm which costs like several $1 million to train. Generative pre-trained transformer 3, and it's like a language of languages machine learning algorithm. So it doesn't matter if your languages or whatever are image-based, word-based, text-based, speech-based, or whatever. This algorithm can transform between all of them. And so what I would like to see as a scientific experiment, or as a machine learning experiment, or as an area of machine learning research, is to take something like GPT-3, consume academic literature, maybe in one field, maybe in all fields, and then look at changing the p-value threshold for the research that they did. And now p-value is another idea from science. But change the p-value that is required to consider whether scientific research has produced a statistically significant result for those papers, and then, like, diffeomorphically author the accepted scientific body of knowledge, or the neighborhood of scientific body of knowledge that neighbors the downstream scientific research for a specific publication or for a specific body of research, and look at like how it changes the body of accepted knowledge when you change the p-value threshold for specific pieces of research. So you'll be using GPT to consume and form a body of knowledge about scientific research, and then you'll be analyzing the research papers after you've constructed the database, and you'll be using something like Watson, IBM's Watson, to produce something like automated cognition or synthetic cognition. So like this is not really possible if you can't like analyze statements and connect them to epistemic structures. And epistemic structures are just like pieces of knowledge, and so you need to be able to. And this is the hard part that makes it almost impossible to research, because you just can't. And I'll continue this at another time, but it would be interesting to see what our accepted body of academic or scientific knowledge, or it would be interesting to see how our accepted body of scientific knowledge changes when you change the p-value threshold for specific pieces of research. And so I've been doing about 5 or 6, there's about 6 or 7 variables that I have to control, or maybe even a dozen variables of control, to produce responses in myself that allow myself to have neuroplasticity, or to address address depression, to address ADD, to address other things, to make it so that I can learn, so to make it so that the benefits of neuroplasticity are accelerated, and so this set of like 6 or 12 different variables which I control. This is like a password or whatever. So you enter the password and you get access to the state or whatever where changes can occur, or the state where healing can occur. This set of variables is probably specific to me. That's why I call it a password. Other people might have a different password. And you can't just go to any grocery store and pick up like supplements off the shelf, even though they may claim to be zinc. They may actually be poison. They may claim to be calcium, but they may be something like calcium carbonate, which is not really a poison, but holy shit, does the stuff on my shower, which we have really hard water here, holy shit, does it like attack my skin. So like if I scrape, like, and I've cleaned off the shower now, but if I scrape like the stuff off of my shower, which is accumulated, which is mostly calcium carbonate, my fingernails will start separating from the skin under them, and it'll be painful for like 3 days. And that is an ionic compound, and there are many ionic compounds that are in vitamins like Centrum, which I have not really liked Syncronicity ever since I took it in 2004 and expected it to help me become stronger faster, and then found it to do the exact opposite. I went from being able to do like 25 push-ups to like 5 push-ups. It was like, I was like, what the hell is wrong with this shit? Anyway, these ionic formulations of minerals are just not, like, you pass them out. Like, in the best case, you pass most of it out. In the worst case, they do a lot of damage. It's like poison. And now I don't know which ones are poison and which ones aren't. But anyway, so I've discovered the password for me, which is like a dozen different things. And a big part of it was probiotics that actually work, like refrigerated probiotics. And I'm going to finish this in just a second, but refrigerated probiotics, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, like magnesium and calcium that can actually be absorbed, I guess Zoloft, which is not really very effective because I think it's like it has affinity for the wrong part of the brain. So it doesn't do the kind of serotonergic things that I need it to do. Adderall helps. One of these factors, which I can't really control in my own life, is social isolation. Um, and like there's nootropics that help a little bit. And there's a couple others. Water and exercise are necessary. And it's only when I control for all these variables that I see results. Now, do scientists control for these? Do they commonly control for these dietary variables in academic literature? No, they don't. They do not. This is why you need to look at the p-value, the p-value threshold, and see how it changes the conclusions of an academic paper. And you can only really do that with something like Watson, that is like a cognitive database or an informational database of facts, and connect it to GPT-3, and then destructure and form a database of academic literature with those tools. And then, yeah, experiment with changing the p-value for certain sets or certain combinations of research where the citations on that research are high, and then look at the references to those highly cited articles and see how those facts, or those things which are accepted as facts in downstream articles, affect the conclusions of those articles. So it's very, very difficult, and there's some methodological problems with this approach, which I won't get into right now, kind of because I forgot. But anyway, that would be an idea that would just change the world. It would just, hands down, change the fucking world. And then there are also methodological problems with medical research. The first of which is that idealistically there are infinite variables, and you can't simply control a handful of variables in rats or in people and assume that your system is sufficient. Well, I guess in some rats you might be able to, because the genetics of those rats are highly controlled. But in people, no, that's not really how it works. But anyway, so you can't really just control a handful of dietary and environmental variables and expect that because you controlled 5 or 10 or 25 variables that your research is methodologically sound. You have to actually control infinite variables, and infinite is a really big fucking number. It's hard to know whether it exists or not. Of course, that's impossible, but there are ways of kind of approximately working with infinite dimensional systems. But the point is, you have to control for a lot more than you think you do. And again, the dozen or so variables for me that are like my password are different from that of others. And the reason this relates to the p-value is that the reason this relates to the p-value is that, like, the p-value is kind of working on, and there's a lot more value that you can extract from data, just depending on how you process it, and what you filter and what you don't filter, and how you leverage, like, the method of moments, like Pearson's method of moments, and how you look at variables and look at coherence in variables or covariance in variables. And so not all of the research is flawed out there, but the point is to extract value from research and then use that value to form new hypotheses, and then test those new hypotheses. There's a lot of change coming in science. Y'all are gonna look at yourselves with horror and shock over what occurred in the late 19th and throughout the 20th and in the 20th centuries. We're gonna look back on ourselves like we did on the scientists from the 16th centuries and the doctors in the 16th centuries who used leeches, and other, like, who had a theory of humors, which is not that bad, I might say. I mean, it's at the time wasn't very sound at all. But if you think of humors as like quantities of hormones and stuff, and you actually can control for those things or measure them, then it's actually not that bad. Anyways, we're going to look at back at these centuries with shock and horror at how bad we were. Now, science and medicine is also very good. It has produced a lot of results, mostly in physical medicine. Conventional medicine is very good. There's many, many things that doctors do very well, and there are many, many things that doctors do very badly. Very, very badly. You assholes in America alone have at least, I would say, 50,000 or 100,000 deaths on your hands by not recommending vitamin D, vitamin C, and real zinc, like, loudly enough. You have blood on your hands, and you need to face the music. And a time is coming when there will be research from artificial intelligence, and you will not be able to stop or control or filter the results that are reached. And there will be a time of reckoning where you are forced to address certain things like statin drugs, and how statin drugs make the body more susceptible to viral pneumonia, especially the viral pneumonia that was caused by coronavirus. Because statins operate on, or statins, I believe, yeah, see potential role of statins in COVID-19. Now, if this is the paper that I think it is, I'm about to get real angry. Yeah, it is. Pretty sure it is. Or maybe not. Where is that? Animals. Yeah, I mean, this research, it's bullshit. It is absolute bullshit. It is the medical research community covering its own ass. This is a hit piece. This is just an excuse. And you know what? People look up to you as researchers, and you need to like look at yourselves critically. Like, you're respectable. You give up, you sacrifice a lot, but you're also afraid to speak because you will lose everything that you have. And that's just the way it is, and it's sad, but it is the way it is. It is the way it is. If a doctor speaks and they say things that can't be justified, then they may lose their license. But anyway, I kind of got off track here, but that is what it is. I give Trump an 85. I'm on to my next live stream. I'll be back on in like 15 minutes. I'm going to be doing a live stream on censorship. So,